Users of Reddit, what's a job that attracts the absolute worst type of person? Nightclub owner. I have yet to meet one that wasn't fraudulent in some way. Was thinking strip club owner, so along the same lines. They just seem to be seedy people in general. I worked at a strip club at the door. I looked around and realized everyone was being exploited, so I stopped showing up. It was just a coral reef of awful behavior, somehow self-sustaining. Strip clubs are the ideal gathering place for illicit activities. They're open during the day, they don't have windows, and you can buy some time in private rooms. They're also private businesses in their own right, so they have the right to turn away any visitors, especially ones who might be law enforcement. My husband and I went to one right after we got married. Parking lot full of cars, but maybe 3 customers, 1 very bored dancer, and 1 equally bored bartender. We had a couple drinks and left. On our way out, we glanced to the left and there was an open office door with 4 massive Russian dudes loudly arguing over several giant stacks of cash. Think like 15 inches high, 5 or 6 of them. We looked in, they looked up, and the arguing stopped and they glared at us. We couldn't get to our car fast enough. Just people in that position in general. I worked for a lot of event promoters, and on one circuit there was a well-known family-built company that went back to the Grateful Dead days, and they all grew up in that world. The kid was a real sleaze. You'd see him taking girls that looked awfully young for him back to his trailer. Stories of his nitrous addiction. One time, he threatened to withhold my pay at an event he wasn't even promoting. Literally came at me like some mafia guy until I just laid the full situation out for him, basically standing up for myself. He pretty much just lightheartedly agreed with me and drove off. Never heard from him again. Lots of people in that industry leverage little personality quirks to get lots of attention, but they're so shallow and vapid if you even try to scratch the surface. Timeshare sales. I see car salesmen on top of this list so far, but I feel these guys are just on a different level of aggression and scummy behavior. I have so many stories about these bastards. I used to work for an attorney's office helping people get out of timeshares. I've seen timeshare employees chase down elderly people, make them cry, etc. One time a friend came to town for a funeral, which the guy at the hotel knew, and tried to get her to sign up for a timeshare seminar. They're all vultures and don't give a shit about people. They think what they're doing is just and fair, and hike up the maintenance fees and trap people. I hate timeshares with a passion. It's mind-blowing to me that there's no easy way to get out of a timeshare, especially for broke-ass people. My parents got suckered into a timeshare. Then they got suckered by a company claiming they could get them out of the timeshare. How is this shit even legal? I guess crooks write the laws. Timeshare transfer companies are also part of the problem. I fucking hate those places. They just give it to someone else if they can find someone to take over the contract. Who the fuck does that help? They are just as bad as the salesmen. Went to Myrtle Beach last month through a family member's timeshare. It was an awesome vacation that I will remember forever, but we also sat through a timeshare sales thing. It lasted for 2 hours, they said an hour and a half, and they are the pushiest people I have ever dealt with, and they were a few points where I wanted to get up and leave. I stayed because they were offering $150 gift cards if you made it all the way through. When we got to the part where the sales guy comes over and makes all these offers, we told him we couldn't afford it. We told him we needed to buy a new car, which was the truth. And he said, and I'm not kidding here, we offer a credit card so you can put it on there. I looked at him with the evilest look I have ever given someone. I went to say something, but my wife stopped me because what I was going to say would have avoided us getting that gift card. He tried one more time, and when we told him no, he got visibly angry, said, fine, pushed the chair back into the way behind him, and stormed away like a kid who was told they weren't getting a new toy at the store. I get being pushy, but when someone tells you that they can't afford it due to having to buy something you have to have but can't afford, you back off. You don't push back, mock them for being poor, and then storm off like a stuck-up child. Fuck that guy. His name is and he does the timeshare scams for Hilton. If that's how he wants to treat poor people, then maybe he should get fired and forced to work the worst, most humiliating job in the world. These assholes are predatory scumbags. The timeshare thing isn't too bad. The place we stayed at was right on the beach, and we were put in the biggest hotel room I'd ever been in. It was a week of paradise. It seems like it could be a decent deal, but I will not do something with people like that. Fuck. Payday loan people. Financial bullies. Pure and simple. Basically loan sharks. The need is there, but in my experience, they do what they can to trap people in them. They want to keep people in the cycle. It's hard to say they need to be abolished because, like I said, there is a need. Some states cap interest rates. This has caused many of the companies to go out of business. Some have also reported higher amounts of loans. I personally think that there should be programs that banks offer to high-risk customers similar to a payday loan. I know that some do offer advances like this already, but I'm not knowledgeable on how long they take to obtain. Had to work with a shift manager at Pizza Hut who had previously worked for the payday loan place next door. It was gross hearing her cheerfully talk about taking people's money straight from their bank account and thinking it was funny when they were overdrafted. HOA president. It's like some people dream of wielding petty power of the color of your mailbox and height of your grass. This seems like such a weirdly American thing. If someone came and told me my grass was growing pretty tall, I'd thank them. It is, and it came about largely because cities couldn't afford enough building code enforcement staff. HOAs were largely the private sector answer to that, and cities were happy to give developers a tax break for setting them up. But like most things in the private sector, what started out decently enough, making sure people weren't having hazardous environments in the neighborhood or violating health and safety codes, and the fees going to setting up neighborhood-level public works like a dog park, little hiking trails, etc. They functioned early on more like a building cooperative than HOAs do today. It quickly devolved into, your grass is too high, your car is too old, your kids' toys are in the driveway, you're required to fly a flag or can't fly a flag, your house has to be painted in approved colors, you're required to have your roofing redone every so often, whether it's necessary or not, pets need express approval of the HOA, etc. The narrative changed to be about increasing property value rather than what it was originally conceived as, basically neighborhoods subsidizing public works and low-level policing health and safety. What started as a system that included actually good ideas, like the HOA contracting with a landscaping company so nobody had to mow their lawn because they paid into the HOA, became functionally a much more expensive way to rent. Simply because there were no guardrails put in place to prevent overreach. It was a uniquely American solution to a uniquely American problem. Our geography and how our tax districts are drawn, and devolved into one of the truest American economic pastimes, rent-seeking. If you're lucky enough to own a cottage in Canada, you're unlucky enough to have to deal with a cottagers association, which attracts the exact same type of wannabe Mussolini. Scam callers. They have no soul. I told one off once, and he said to me to GFMS. Gives you an idea of their values. It's almost funny how fast the facade drops when you call them out. I was speaking to someone from Amazon about a supposed purchase that I didn't make. When I pointed out why I knew it was a scam, I asked, "Does your mother know what you do for work?" His response was, "Did your mother tell you who your father was? Because I'm your daddy." In all honesty, it kind of pissed me off. It's a decent comeback, but looking back now, it's just hilarious to me that he couldn't keep up the ruse for even 2 minutes. I told a guy from India, "Do you think that this is what your mother wanted for you? Calling people and telling them that their social security has been compromised?" And he got sad and said, "You're right, ma'am. I should get another job." I've come to learn that some of them, hate their job but have no other recourse. They're not getting paid enough elsewhere to support themselves. The devils that run the operation sometimes threaten workers with harm or death. They know what they are doing is wrong. One time, I made a scammer cry. I received a call from a woman claiming to work for my cell phone company. She offered me a deal that sounded too good to be true. I hit her with, "I know you're a scammer, but I have to ask, does this job fulfill you? Would your parents be proud to know you're tricking elderly people out of their life savings?" I continued, "You can speak multiple languages, you have great charisma, and you sound like a businesswoman. You could be doing so many different things." And at that point, I could hear her quietly crying on the phone. I then wished her a blessed day and hung up. Reality is, most of them are desperately poor, and scam calling is something they're doing because little else is available. They are basically temps, and supposedly, a lot of them don't even know what they're getting into when they start. A lot of human trafficking is involved also. A lot of scam callers are basically being held hostage and are physically punished for not meeting quotas. They are tricked into thinking they're applying for a regular job, and then they're held captive. Private equity, no contest. Why did Red Lobster go bankrupt? Because PE went in, bought it, then leased the buildings back to the business. Why? Because the entire goal of PE is to take something that works, bleed it, then sell the parts, all so they can make money. Absolutely. They took Toys R Us and Babies R Us, Red Lobster, and now they're coming for the craft stores. What should frighten us all more is that private equity is in healthcare, owning medical practices and hospitals, and nursing homes, and dentists, and veterinarians, and daycares. I'm a veterinary assistant, and I see how PE is fucking over our entire network of clinics. They pick the worst people for leadership roles, piss off clients by jacking up prices, and giving lower quality services, etc. I didn't understand before. It makes so much sense now. My vet went from always having 2 experienced and 2 young vets to 3 young vets constantly after the owner sold it to a group. I've never felt like I've gotten anything less than their honest best, but it worries me that the only resources there are under 35 now and that they're rotating so often. Prices on a full CBC/Chem panel also went from $140 to $260 after the pandemic, and I seriously doubt the actual staff sees that money. Yup, I'm a vet, and I'm sick of the corporate takeover of vet med. I worked for 4 corps, and they're all the same. They absolutely do not care about staff, clients, or pets, just money. They get rid of experienced staff because they cost a lot, and hire on newbies, all while jacking up prices. I was let go from my previous clinic because they pressured me to do unnecessary tests, and I refused. Sometimes they do not change the clinic name or let people know their clinic is corp. One thing people can do is always ask the staff if the clinic is corp before booking any appointments. It's not just Lobster. Think of the decline of most major companies over the last 20 years. The parasite private equity is usually the final nail in the coffin. Most companies have bumps along the way, some have investors or government bail them out, but if it's private equity, it's a rot that will surely kill. Most jobs that have some level of power over people are the ones that have horrible staff. The reason is people. Power tends to corrupt, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. Can someone explain a PE firm to me like I'm 5? Rich people put money into an investment fund. This money is then used to buy a significant stake in a business to gain voting power within the business. Once voting power is secured, the fund managers make changes to streamline business operations, typically by cutting costs and expenses to juice profits. Now the business is worth more because annual profits are higher, even if revenues stayed the same or decreased. So the investment fund can sell their stake for a higher price than they acquired it and use the capital to do it again with a different business. There's quite a bit more nuance to this and many methods to increase profitability, but that's the high-level summary. Cops. It's the only group of people in America that I instantly distrust and feel resentful about. I feel less comfortable around a police officer than any single person on Earth. Because they can do literally anything to you. There's often a law that you're technically breaking they can cite you for, or at least a gray area law you can't prove. If they write resisting arrest or assaulting an officer, then it's true. Or they can make something up that will never stick, but make you go through the jail and court system all the same. Wall Street. These guys are trash. I have to go to New York a couple times a year and had a friend who's a broker. We'd go out with his buddies. It was like Wolf of Wall Street, but not in a good way. They were just so over the top of everything. Drugs, booze, hookers, and really douchey stories about their success. What would be Wolf of Wall Street in a good way? I feel the same way. I hate how people think that movie's really great and that Jordan Belfort is kind of a hero. The guy ripped a bunch of small-time investors off and then turned on all of his inner circle to reduce the amount of time he'd get after he got caught. He's a total rat and sleaze. I think Scorsese really failed to show him an industry for how it is. At least Oliver Stone's Wall Street showed the consequences of insider trading for Bud Fox in the end, and it revealed that a scumbag Gordon Gekko was, not somebody to be admired. Honestly, most of the people I know who ended up on Wall Street are just quiet nerds. Think like incel core, but they don't hate women. I used to assume it was just Jordan Belfort simps, but I don't know if those types are driven enough to survive in Wall Street nowadays. Life coach. I've met a lot through my previous career as personal trainer, and they are all alcoholic cokeheads, lol. And mindfulness instructors need to learn their own lessons. They are so stressed over any little inconvenience. I know a woman who's a life, parenting, and sleep coach. She's a tax and benefits cheat, her kids are fucking feral, and go to bed whenever the fuck they want. It's baffling. The pipeline of stand-up comedian to life coach in LA is all too real. Oh god, that sounds like a nightmare. Imagine reaching out for help and that's who shows up. Ugh, there's one who moved to my area and brags about how he starred in Sharknado, he was one of the extras on the beach, and coached celebrities. Just look at all these pictures that were clearly taken at public conventions. He is well known here for going to open mic nights and booing, heckling from the back. A few weeks later, the bar and club owner will announce that open mic isn't popular anymore, so it's cancelled, and guess who's going to be hosting a new weekly comedy show that night instead? I'm not kidding when I say this has happened no less than 30 times in the past 5 years. Someone in LA, please come get your ass clown. The only people I've met who've become life coaches are people who've failed at everything else. One person I know took out a $10K loan to complete an online program. She's the type of person who knows everything about everything though, so I didn't tell her what a terrible idea that was. How have things turned out for her? Is she successfully scamming anyone? I don't think so. She's still working her old job. Met a lot of degenerates as a chef. Not usually truly evil people though, just degenerates. I literally grew up in the restaurant industry and worked in them through high school and college. One thing I realized as I got older was many of the people who end up working in restaurants for life are people who never grew out of teenager behavior. I have seen this to be true with anyone I know in the restaurant industry. It's like they only see one aspect of humans as customers, and don't understand the depth and nuance that a customer has outside of eating in a restaurant. They hate customers, and their overall conclusion about humans are immature because they only deal with customers. I think a lot of the hate for customers in hospitality and higher-end retail is because the workers can't really afford the same luxuries. Sure, it is their job to put on a smile and serve demanding customers, but they're usually poorly paid jobs with a lot of disadvantages. All of my hate for customers for my time in customer service came from them and them alone. They could be just horrific the way they talked to and treated staff. I couldn't care less what they could afford that I couldn't. If they treated me like shit because they felt entitled to something, I hated them. My friend was a chef. He said a lot of his coworkers were like this because they were all former criminals, specifically those on the list. Yeah, a few of my friends have convictions. I grew up relatively sheltered in rural Ireland. I'm no angel, but certainly nothing crazy wild. First job in the UK on my first day, 2 of my colleagues told me about their convictions. I was taken aback, but actually appreciated their openness. 10 years later, one of them is a very close friend who's definitely been there for me during my darkest times and realistically helped save me from myself and is someone I could tell absolutely anything to with no fear of being judged. The other likely would have ended up a close friend, but he left that job soon after, so we didn't end up staying in touch, just due to circumstances. We got along great for the time we knew each other. Being an influencer. I have never heard of one that isn't a sociopath, a narcissist, or arrogant. They are all terrible. It's a job built for narcissists. All you millions of people, watch me open this box. Something I noticed from videos is how many female cooking influencers use the same combination of vocal fry and a bored tone when reading off the ingredients in their videos. Drives me up the freaking wall. Also shouldn't be considered a job. In what world is making advertisements, marketing, filmography, script writing, video editing, and acting while making hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars not a job? They're mostly attempted get-rich-quick schemes, and the moral fiber of a lot of them is questionable. Anything for clicks, likes, and subscribes. May as well set up a Ponzi scheme. I'm sure there are some doing it with integrity, but a lot more are not. Not universally, but nursing tends to attract the most extreme ends of the spectrum. Either the absolute best people on earth, or the absolute worst high school bullies you've ever met. Nurse here. Scrolled looking to see if it was posted. Further down than I thought it would be. Thank you for stating it with nuance. Most are great, but the ones that are bad, and quite memorable. A couple things are at play here. I'm a nurse, and probably a piece of shit. Nursing can be a hectic as fucking hell job. You are constantly being pulled in 1,000 directions, dealing with asshole physicians, trying to deal with nightmare families, trying to keep Mima from climbing out of bed and breaking her hip, plus management constantly asking them to do more with less. 12 straight hours of information overload, and if you fuck up, you could kill someone. The burnout rate is super high, so you end up with people who went into nursing for good reason who are now burnt to a crisp. Secondarily, there are 4 million nurses in the United States. When you have 4 million people, some of them are just going to be assholes. I don't think it's the majority who are inherently assholes, though. Most of the assholes are that way because healthcare has become a machine built on maximizing profits, and nursing staff get shit on because of this, and they are tired. Worked as a nurse in the same hospital for 28 years, watched the decline. Mostly agree with management being the major cause of the problems. Got so burnt out. Always treated my patients with respect even if I didn't like them, but had no respect for most of management. So I don't think nursing attracts the worst kind of people. It's the situation around them that causes the problem. Yeah, the bully to nurse pipeline is absolutely a real thing. There are two types of people who end up in nursing. People who genuinely see it as their life's calling to look after people, and people who spent their entire school life being a bully and then took up nursing as a desperate attempt to prove to themselves and others that they're a good person, while still, in fact, being reprehensible assholes. The worst part is that many bullies in the same work environment often corrupts the non-bullies, forcing them out or ruining their attitude. Yeah, in my family, one of my mom's cousins is a nurse, and she always appeared to be a decent enough person, maybe a little fake, but never really seemed mean or nasty. That is, until her mother, my great-aunt, passed away and she became responsible for managing her physically and mentally ill older brother's finances and social security. This poor man spent his last years in a shitty nursing home, dying of cancer, and suffering from schizophrenia, having to beg people for cigarettes because his sister stole all his money to redo her new house with her affair partner as well as buy a new car. Karma kinda got her and her new husband in the end, though. He's got MS. No matter how bad they are, I don't think I'd wish that on anyone, and she's stuck caring for him. If that's how she treated her sick brother, I truly worry about her patients. From what I've seen, leadership in non-profits or not-for-profits can get some real fuck-ups that want a power trip on the smallest stuff and would never hack it in a more professional environment. I met a guy who ran a non-profit food pantry. I thought that was admirable. Went on a date with him. Turns out he was a disgusting human being. He wasn't even the president, but president's son. We live in a very wealthy area, and he would just show up at golf courses to pay and schmooze people to donate their company stipends to his pantry, etc. Sure, okay, all for the greater good, I guess. If they declined, he would guilt them into paying his rounds free. He also said he was visiting a pantry in person tomorrow. Admirable, because it was a good photo op. Not admirable. He then told me how rich he was, and even more rich his family was because of this. They traveled all the time, and he wanted to scoop me up and fly me away. These were hardly the only questionable comments. The only thing he wanted to talk or gloat about was himself, and boy did he. He also tried to play footsie with me and kiss me twice. I told him we were incompatible and I had to go. Big fucking yikes. I went on a date to get to know someone that loves helping as much as I do, not to jet set on your misappropriated blood fortunes while the people you're supposed to be helping do without. Haven't spoken to him since. I used to work at a nonprofit that wasn't bad, but I will say that many jobs that nonprofits advertise are fundraising jobs, and it's the less glamorous reality. It's a pretty miserable existence just sitting there writing grant proposals and fundraiser planning constantly. I was lucky to do some operational stuff, which was really enjoyable in retrospect, but everybody wants to do this sexy volunteering work when the actual day-to-day nonprofit operation is pretty boring. I experienced this in a job I had back in the 10s. The executive director was a textbook narcissist, who basically had free reign to do whatever she wanted. There was a board of trustees, but all they did was just rubber stamp whatever the director did. Many times over the years, us staff members complained to them about her treatment, and nothing was ever accomplished. They would have a meeting about it, and then decide to do nothing. I feel that they were all people who just joined the board to pad their resume and didn't want to make waves, so they kept their heads down and approved whatever the director told them to approve. Shit, my mom went through this in a medical context with really high stakes. Narcissist boss who hired incompetent people if they would back her up. Can't even say more because, while old, it could still be a big legal thing if people realize the lives that were endangered. Luckily, she's not running shit anymore. I did an internship in a factory that employed people with disabilities. At first I thought, wow, they give them a chance to be useful and feel like they're part of the society. After 2 weeks, I quit because the employers and everyone involved were just narcissistic psychopaths that wanted cheap labor that can't talk back. Some people were paid $5 a day because they were too handicapped, so it was like a government subvention or something, yet they would push them to work hard and nothing was ever enough. Like, they're paid $5 a day, just let them vibe. I work for Intech and hate dealing with nonprofits. First, they want it free or at significantly reduced rates, and second, they hire the worst tech guys and girls in the business. Oh man, I work in a non-profit and that isn't my experience. We generally underperform as a business because we're always helping other people to the detriment of ourselves. I do have one boss who's an ass, but he's trying to move away from the non-profit side because he thinks we should make money. He basically wants to strip out the social side and focus on profits, with the end result clearly being take away the non-profit side and reopen as a purely limited company. He's an incompetent twat though, so he won't get his way. We'll fold before that happens, as he has no clue what he's doing and doesn't realize he's walking around showing everyone his hand. Just to add, no one earns more than 30k pounds in our business, so no one is getting more under the guise of charitable aims. We literally skin ourselves helping others. And what makes me want to walk away is the utter shit we get for being non-profit, as the assumption is we're doing it for our guys. I'm actually at the end of my tether and have learned the hard way. No good deed goes unpunished. Never work for a charity or non-profit for kudos of helping people because no one will acknowledge it, and worse, they'll try to make you out that you're a conniving cunt. Only ever do it because you genuinely want to help people, and the results for you from that are nothing and actually are negative. Expect to be vilified, but always remember the people who actually need you because society doesn't meet their needs. Yes, I worked in a non-profit in 01 and 02. I had a law degree but didn't want to practice, so I accepted a very low-paying job as an assistant legal director. Holy mackerel. Those women, it was all women who worked there, were the most toxic assholes I had ever met. About half were trust funders who looked down on everyone. The other half were victims of violence and were hostile to those of us who aren't. I mean, I guess I could see them being angry at the world, but don't take it out on me, bro. The executive director made well over $100K. She would regularly come into the lunchroom and eat your food, as you were eating it. Someone had a piece of cake sitting near her lunch, and the woman grabbed it and stuffed it in her mouth. She was certainly something. Anything to do with power. What's wrong with electricians? They're so negative half the time, but they're so positive the other half. Hey, that really hurts. HOA. One of the people on my HOA board asked me to stop walking my dog between the canal and her house, which is community property, so I ignored her. She followed me across the grounds to try to get my address, called 911, and told the officer that arrived that she's on the HOA board. The police told her that she had no case and could be charged with harassment, and the board as a body had to reprimand her for abuse of authority. I still can't believe the idiocy. I'll make a small exception here for my dad. His neighbor disputed their property line when they wanted to plant a new tree. Markers from the previous survey were still there. Neighbors said the tree would be planted on their property and not my dad's, even though the markers said otherwise. Their HOA decided to let the neighbor run with it rather than go with the markers on site, and eventually a new survey was scheduled. New surveys showed the previous one screwed up, and not only would the tree be on Dad's property, but they also gained another 6 feet in that direction. He ran for HOA president the following year and won, and by all accounts he made it much easier to deal with for all of the residents. The neighbor moved out before he ran. Lol. Real estate. Parents went into assisted living. Thanks to 15 years of deferred maintenance and a half-century of junk to sort through, we had not yet decided if we would sell, let alone when. The calls and visits from realtors started 2 weeks later. I told them we had no plans to sell. Didn't matter. While I was out of town, one realtor, who knew a neighbor had a key for emergencies, asked him to let her in so she could show it. She told him I had given permission. I hadn't. At least 2 realtors knew the status of all the elderly homeowners within several blocks, how old one couple around the corner was, and that they had part-time caregivers, and that one guy living up the street had a few months to live. I asked about my friend's mother a half-mile away. One knew her by name, and that she had been in the hospital recently, which I confirmed. My parents were known to be on the bubble for a while, as they were visibly frail, so even neighbors came by to try to score commission for their brothers-in-law. Psychologists. A good concentration of bad eggs in that field. My aunt is a manipulative narcissist. I truly believe she doesn't feel a shred of empathy for anything or anyone but herself. She even has a tattoo of a marionette on her arm because she's so proud of manipulating people. She's a child psychologist. I am sometimes honestly shocked at the kinds of people who become child psychologists. Not bad people per se, but they really don't seem to suit the job. I had a friend whose dad was a child psychologist. This man was a perfectionist who couldn't stand mess and would lose his shit if anything in his house got messy or dirty. He was constantly yelling at his 21-year-old son about everything, ranging from life choices to buying cheese that was too expensive. I often wondered how he interacted with the children that were his patients, and now that I say it out loud, I'm a little worried. Work child, neuro, and vanilla psych. Can confirm that about way too many of my old coworkers. Kid psych tends to attract either people who mean well and don't really enjoy time with grown-ups, like me. Grown-ups overcomplicate everything. Kids are great, and if we all kept seeing the world like kids, the world would have a lot fewer problems. Or people with some serious unresolved childhood traumas of their own and are the most malignant motherfuckers you'd ever care to meet. It's like pediatrics over in normal healthcare. Very little middle ground, and it tends to attract either people who genuinely like working with kids or people who can't work anywhere else. Money is terrible in anything dealing with kids. It's not something that highly capable people tend to get into unless they genuinely like the work and the patients. But that's the field as a whole. Each subfield tends to attract the people with related unresolved traumas, and instead of dealing with it, the constant exposure to it just makes them relive their own traumas and makes them worse. Because they can't, 1. Fix everybody else, 2. Fix themselves. Kid psych, though, is really psych as a whole. Most kids don't need fixing. They need someone to talk to. They need somewhere safe to open up. They need things validated, help putting messy, awful shit into words, and working through how to deal with it all. So too do we all. Kids just have a much easier time doing it generally because you need to grow up, not be a kid, STFU about your feelings, focus on being productive. Hasn't fully sunk in for them yet. The kids are great in kid psych. The adults make it fucking miserable on every level, either side of the room. I think a lot of people are attracted to this field to understand themselves and their own emotional neglect. Lots of hurting people in this field and people who have experienced trauma, but not all terrible people. There seems to be a stronger push for psych students now to understand how imperative it is for them to also seek therapy while working as a therapist, but I don't think it'll actually stick with the current generations in college programs right now. I'm a millennial that went back to grad school, and I've had some of the most fucked up classmates. I don't understand how people can be in helper careers and be any flavor of bigotry. Yeah, I feel like the profession is overrun by bad and subpar therapists at this point. Too many people are going to therapy and thinking they're doing good, just to end up making zero progress and potentially coming out more damaged by bad actors. I ran across one of them. She seemed helpful at first and empathized with me on some stuff, but over the next few months, she repeatedly told me that if I didn't do, or at least consider doing, X, Y, and Z, I'd end up a weird, sad, lonely, eccentric adult. I finally had enough and left. A number of months later, I considered suing her, or at least filing a complaint against her, only to find out she died of pancreatic cancer. I know it must have been a horrible death, and I know I'm horrible to say this, but honestly, I feel like karma did its job. HR. I second this. People high in HR develop a special type of ego, sitting way too high on their horses, thinking they have the best mental and friendly personality. No, they don't. They insert themselves in everyone's business, try to solve and point out everyone's issues, even down to the very, very teeny ones that have no major impact on anyone's lives. It's just annoying and off-putting. Also, they swap through friends a lot. Call centers, especially for things like bill collecting and cold call sales. I worked for a job placement outfit right out of college, and we had a couple large call centers we did the hiring for. While most of our clients had some standards, the call centers would literally take anybody. Their turnover rate was so high they couldn't be picky. They would take people nobody else would touch with a 10-foot pole. Drug addicts, sex offenders, convicted felons, including rapists and murderers. They didn't care. If you had a pulse and could fill a seat, they would take you. My previous company was a call center. They planned on people only lasting 6 months and didn't know what to do with me when I had been there for 2 years. As long as you weren't a convicted felon, they would hire you. I worked with one guy that loved his stolen prescription pills and would sit there during slow times and sort through them and wax poetic about the effects of them individually and when combined with each other. If he couldn't decide what to take, he'd take several random pills just to see what would happen and hope for the best. He finally discovered meth, and he decided that was just downright magical. About a month later, he decided the Pacific Northwest was meth mecca and abruptly moved out there. Another guy kept getting bounced around on shifts and scheduled to minimize as much as possible contact with women at work that had restraining orders against him. I'd run into him again at my next company, where he somehow landed an IT job and started collecting new restraining orders. I was coming in one afternoon as he was being walked out, and that was the last I saw of him. Not sure how he passed the background check, unless the previous ones all expired before applying. Another lived in his in-laws' garage and thought he was living like a king because he could pull his car in and be on the couch before the garage door closed. The topless bar was the best invention known to man, and as soon as he accrued 8 hours of time and had a fresh paycheck, he'd call out to spend it there. It was quite interesting times. I got a job when I was in my 20s working for a tech company that specialized in real estate. Answered a vaguely worded job ad. They sold a decent product. It was personal websites for realtors with all these gee-whiz things baked into them before Zillow and all the other apps and websites were a thing. But they were hiring for a cold call position. During the interview, I learned that it was a sales position, which was fine. Not all sales positions are bad, like following up with someone who expressed interest is not so bad. Cold calling is really fucking bad. It turned out to be the latter. Lasted literally 2 days, and one was onboarding and training. I don't have a single cell in my body that wants to bother unsuspecting people and try to convince them to buy something they never intended to buy. I did collections for Finger Huts straight out of high school. Other than the soul-sucking that came with being in a cubicle or call center, I feel like I lost humanity. I cleared one elderly lady's account who bought her grandkids school clothes, spent nearly 8 years paying it off with her social security check before I was fired. I know they likely fixed what I did, but I hope it fell through the cracks. Fox News analyst. Just scripted actors and entertainers at this point, aren't they? Nothing analytical about making an argument and defending a position that is objectively nonsensical. It's basically WWE, but for news and politics, except their fans didn't believe them when they said it wasn't real news. Journalism. There are some exceptions, but for the most part, there are two kinds of journalists. Lying scumbags who will say anything to stoke controversy, no matter how many people they hurt. They'd publish an article calling their own mother a whore if they thought it would get clicks. People who think scrolling Twitter for quotes is a hard day's work. There are very few journalists left who will ever do any kind of actual research.